Hello, friends. Um, Back to give you a lesson this week on scientific notation. So I hope that you were able to look at our weekly agenda to see what's coming up for the week. We have a couple of days with working with scientific notation, and then we have a couple of other activities that we're going to work on. So on for Monday's work, you can see that we have the first thing I'm asking you to do is to watch this short video on scientific notation. And then the second slide is where you'll actually see the video that I'm recording right now. So you'll watch that. Just remind yourself that you'll want to pause it as needed to fill in the guided notes sheet. So pause it if you need to, then go in and fill in some things, and then go back and click it to keep watching it or watch a little bit of it and then try to see what you can remember. Um, Someone's ringing my doorbell. Can they ring it twice now? So, this is what happens when you work from home. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and start with our scientific notation notes, the guided notes. And so we're starting with regular notation. And in this first blank, what we're going to type here is this is the standard way that we write our numbers. So regular notation is what we're used to. That's what we always write, is just our standard way. And so our example for this is 208 million. The way that we would write that is 208, and then we're going to have 6 zeros, and I like to put those commas in there to help me separate my place value. So 208 million, you can see how that's written. So make sure that you are filling this in on your note sheet as well. Now, when we talk about scientific notation, and I know you learned this in elementary school, so a lot of this can be review. For scientific notation, this is a shorthand way. We're going to write in a shorthand way, kind of a shortcut, that we write really large or really small numbers. So in scientific notation, you'll see sometimes it's represented as SN. A number can be written as a product. Remember, product is multiplication, answer we get when we multiply. So it can be written as a product of two factors. Two factors. That means two numbers that we're multiplying together. And our example that we have is we're using that same number, 208 million. The way that we would write that is 2.8 times, and it's usually an X for times, and then 10 to the 8th power. Now, if you don't have a way to do exponent, you do that little caret like that. It's right above the 6, shift and 6, and then you do the 8, and that lets me know, or your teacher know, that you're doing exponents there. So I'm just going to move that up a little bit there so it's on the line. Okay, so, and we've got that same exponent down here. Same scientific notation down here, 2.8 times 10 to the 8th power. So let's look over here in this first box on the left side. It tells us the first factor. This number right here, looking at 2.8, this is a number, and it is always between 1 and 10. So 2.8 is between 1 and 10. It can be less than 1, and it cannot be more than 10. So it has to be between. It may or may not be a decimal. So sometimes it will be, and most of the time we will see it like that as a decimal, just like in this case. But sometimes it's not, and that's okay. Sometimes it would just be like maybe 2, okay? Now over here in our second box where we're looking at 10 to the 8th power, okay, so this is our second factor, where remember we're talking about product multiplying these things. So this second factor that we're talking about, it is always a power of 10. That over a little bit so you can see that a little bit better for your notes. There we go. And then the power of the exponent, that tells us how many places we're going to move the decimal point. The sign, whether it's positive or negative, that's the next part. sign of the exponent is going to tell us which direction we move it. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So again, if you need to pause the video to go back and fill in the work, please do that. Our second slide, so we're talking about regular notation versus scientific notation. So on the left side, if we have regular notation, if the decimal is moved to the left, that means the exponent will be positive. And when we're talking about scientific notation, again, we're going from regular notation to scientific notation. If the decimal is moved to the right, then the exponent will be negative. So here's our example. So we have regular notation, 420,000. And so this table gives us the actual directions, what we need to do to change this into scientific notation. So it says we move the decimal after the 4 and before the 2. So that means that our first factor is 4.2 times something. And then we have to figure out it's 10 to some power. We've got to figure out how many places are we going from that 4.2. So counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places. So 10 to the 5th power. For our next one, 735 million. So that decimal is going to be 7.35. Remember, that has to be between 1 and 10 times 10 to, and you have to figure out how many places. So we've got 6 zeros, and we're not just counting zeros, right? We're counting spaces. So 1, 2, and then those 6 zeros. So it's 8 spaces. So 7.35 times 10 to the 8th power. Now this one is 897. This is tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s. So the way we would say that is 897 100,000s. Again, we're moving that decimal between the 8 and the 9 because our decimal, our first factor, has to be between 1 and 10. And we don't drop that 7. We write out all those numbers, all of those digits in there, times 10 2, and now we have to figure out, now remember this said if we take our decimal to the right, and we're going 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right, where over here we were moving that decimal to the left. So because we're going 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right, that's going to be 10 to the negative 3rd power. And our last one here, that's tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millionths. So 14 10 millionths. And so that goes 1.4 times 10 2. And this, how many spaces? We're doing 6 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get between that 1 and 4. Remember that first factor has to be between 1 and 10. So this is to the negative 6th power. If you're using the caret for that, you might want to just put parentheses around that so that it doesn't look too messy, okay? Now we've got one more to look at, one more guided note sheet. So now, what if we're given scientific notation and we have to write it as regular notation? So for this one, if the exponent is negative, then that means we move the decimal to the left. And if the exponent is positive, we move that decimal to the right. So let's try a little bit of practice here. So here we've got the exponent is positive, and so that's saying I'm going to move the decimal to the right, and this 5 is telling me how many spaces. So I have 7, 5, and then I'm going to count over 1, and I'm going to keep going. So when I start typing my answer, I'm going to have 75, and now I've moved it one place. There's 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces altogether, and then I can go back and put in a comma, so I get 750,000. 3 and 8 tenths times 10 to the 4th, so that's going to be 38. I've just moved it one place. That 4 is positive, so I'm going to the right, and I'm moving it 4 spaces. So now remember, I already did 1, so there's 2, 3, 4, so that gives me 38,000. Go back and put your commas in. Makes it easier to read your number. Now these last two, we've got negative exponents. And so when we have negative exponents, that means we go to the left. So here from 4 and 2 tenths, I'm going to go over 1. I'm going to go 2, 3. So that looked like I was adding 2 zeros there. So 0.0042. And let's just check that. So we were right here at 4.2. 1, 2, 3 spaces. 7 and 51 hundredths times 10 to the negative 5. So we know that we're going to go again, we're going to go to the left because it's a negative exponent. So I'm going to go over 1, and then I have to go 4 more spaces. That means 4 zeros in front of that. So 0. You don't have to put the 0 in front, but not a bad idea. 4 zeros and then 7, 5, 1. And let's just double check. So we were right here between 7 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, once you've finished all of this, the guided notes, your practice for today is to do this last slide on here where you're going to go in and type in your answers, and then we will post the answer key on the day after this is due for you to check your work. So if you have any questions, just email your teacher and let us know. If you need some help or there's something you're not understanding. And we hope everybody is doing well. We hope you're staying healthy, and we miss seeing you.